All right, so on page 56, take a minute and read through data classification. See that blue line at the bottom? Just read through that. Take some notes if you need to, but just read through this, because a lot of what we're going to do moving forward has to do with terminology, vocabulary, and stuff like that that you need to become familiar with. You might find yourself pausing videos in order to just kind of reflect back on what the terms mean. So pause the video now, take a look at these terms, read through them, familiarize yourself with them, and then continue on with the video. So in number one, I took the liberty of kind of getting us started. So if we're classifying data as being nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio, we have to make some assumptions. Well, in some cases. In the case of letter grades, it is possible that if we're just assuming, all right, so I'm just gonna highlight this. If we're just assuming this information, the only place that we're going to be living would be in the realm of ordinal. All right. Even if we assume GPA associated with it, I don't think we'll ever get past the ordinal level, because, for example, if I give you, I'll just take it off the top of my head here. I have 3 and 2 circled, but that's not the one I wanted. Let me do, because I think it's a more powerful example if I circle these two. All right. Well, I can't subtract A minus B. I don't know what that is. And a key ingredient to move us away from the ordinal level into the interval level is to make the differences between data values have meaning. All right. If I can't get them to have meaning, then I'm stuck in the ordinal level. Right? It's a hierarchy. We work our way from nominal to ordinal, interval to ratio in that order. So you may look at it and say, well, if I'm assuming the GPAs 4 minus 3 equals 1, all right, I can find the differences. But then the question becomes, does that difference have meaning? All right, so now you can make further assumptions, but here's what I'm assuming. So student completes B level work. All right, wants an A in a class. Teacher gives an assignment. All right, so the teacher gives an assignment and says, if you complete this, you do a good job on this, I'll give you an A. Student completes the assignment. With D level work. Expects an A in the class. Does that sound reasonable? Well, from the student's perspective, he's thinking B plus D is equal to an A because of the GPAs associated with it. Well, I had a 3.0, I add a 1.0 to it, I get an A. All right. You know, like for some of you younger students, you know, you're the 13th graders, you know, the ones who just finished high school, the bane of all of our existence. What you end up doing sometimes is you start off going to college and you think, all right, I'm on my own, parents don't care. And then at the end of the first semester, you find out, oh, well, they still do. Because what you didn't think was going to happen still happens. They want to know what your grades were. I say, how'd you do the first semester? I'm paying all this money for school. How'd you do? And you say, I did great. I got an A. You say, I thought you took more than one class. Yeah, I took 4 classes, and I got a D in each of them, but 1 plus 1 plus 1 is equal to 4, and so 4 D's equals an A, so I get an A. And so that conversation, I'm sure, doesn't go very well after that. And that is my rationale for keeping it in the ordinal level. All right, you can make other assumptions that allow you to move it into the interval or ratio level, but these are the assumptions I'm working with. So answers vary for stuff like this, but you do need to justify. Gender, I think, is very clearly nominal, because your gender does not indicate anything related to value. All right, so just simply by the label. M versus F versus whatever the other options are. I'm not qualified to speak to that as much as some of my colleagues, but I do have an understanding that it's not just limited to the 2 anymore, or it never was, I guess. But they are labels. All right. Weight in carats of diamonds. All right. So I only learned this recently. A carat with a C is a measurement used for gemstones. A carat with a K is used in measuring the amount of pure gold in jewelry, or I guess in gold in general. All right. So for this case, I would be looking at ratio, because I would be figuring that if the value is based off of weight, a weight can be equal to 0. But then somebody else comes along and says interval, if weight is equal to 0, there is no diamond. Then a third person comes along and says ratio, because maybe the weight rounded to 0. Maybe it was so small, like this teensy tiny speck of a diamond, that the directions in a problem said round to the nearest integer, and the nearest one was 0. Yeah, that's possible. So there is a possibility for debate based off assumptions here. So the only thing, again, that I ask you to do is justify your answer. So on a test, it's going to say, classify the data as one of the 4 possibilities, the NOIR, N-O-I-R, nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio, and give an explanation for why you chose the one you did. Body temperature, same idea. All right, we could say interval, temperatures would not be equal to 0 0 degrees what, though? Fahrenheit, Celsius, whatever. Okay. Because we're assuming that the individual is alive. And human, I guess. All right, and then somebody else comes along and says, all right, I'll see your living human, and I'll raise you a dead human, which is pretty morbid, I guess. Temperature can be 0 degrees. Who said anything about a living human? And then another person might come along and say, body could mean anything. Body of water. All right. So, like, I mean, I think it'd be a stretch to say something like the body of an essay, but I mean, really, you could think of anything. Like, and besides, the body of water, like that. that could be a little iffy too, but there's a lot of variation involved here, so a lot of wiggle room for you to draw a conclusion based off of your own perception and knowledge. All right, so and also temperature scales come into play. You're talking about Fahrenheit, Celsius, or Kelvin, because if it's 0 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 32 degrees below freezing in the Fahrenheit scale. If you're talking about 0 degrees Celsius, that is freezing, the temperature at which water freezes, so, is it water, if you're talking about bodies, like bodies of liquid, a lot of different possibilities, right? So you just got to, go with what makes sense to you, but as long as you have a reasonable explanation for why you're saying what you're saying, then everything